Picture this. You're at a flea market, haggling over a sweet vintage lamp. You offer the seller $20, they want $30. That, my friends, is a micro-negotiation, much like international trade. Countries, just like our flea market friends, want the best deals for their goods. Enter tariffs. Those pesky fees slapped onto imported products. They're like the bouncer at a club, making it pricier for some to get in. Sometimes it's just a little nudge. Other times, it's a full-on, you're not on the list situation. Now, imagine a bunch of countries throwing tariffs around like confetti at a parade. That's a trade war. Everyone's trying to protect their own industries, but it usually ends up costing consumers more. Think pricier washing machines, cars, even that avocado toast you love. The US, throughout its history, has dabbled in its fair share of tariff tussles. We've seen it all, from protecting our baby industries to full-blown economic showdowns. Buckle up, Buttercup, things are about to get interesting. In the world of economics, 2018 was a wild year. Donald Trump, a man known for his bold pronouncements and even bolder business tactics, was president. He decided to tackle what he saw as unfair trade practices head-on, like a bull seeing red, but instead of horns, he used tariffs. Specifically, a 20% tariff on a whole bunch of goods imported from countries like China, Mexico, and others. It was a big deal. Trump argued this tariff hurricane was needed to protect American jobs and businesses. He claimed other countries were playing dirty, undercutting American industries, and it was time to fight back. But not everyone was on board the Trump tariff train. Critics, including economists, business leaders, and even some folks within his own party, cried foul. They argued that tariffs, while maybe good in small doses, can backfire when you hit a whole bunch of countries with them all at once. They predicted higher prices for consumers, retaliation from other countries, and ultimately, harm to the very businesses and workers Trump claimed to be protecting. Fasten your seatbelts, folks. We're diving into the wild world of Trump's 20% tariff. Let's rewind the clock, way back to when America was just a scrappy little upstart, fresh off a dramatic breakup with England. We were young, eager to prove ourselves, and maybe a little bit obsessed with building our own American industries. Enter tariffs, those trusty economic border guards, here to protect our fledgling businesses from the big bad wolves of foreign competition. Back in the 1800s, tariffs were the name of the game. They were a major source of government revenue, no income tax back then, and a way to nurture our own industries. But like that overprotective parent who can't let go, our reliance on tariffs started causing some friction. Other countries, not too thrilled with our America First economic policy, retaliated with tariffs of their own. Still, tariffs played a crucial role in shaping America's economic identity. They helped us build industries, create jobs, and establish ourselves as a global player. Fast forward to the 1930s, a time when the world was in the throes of the Great Depression, a global economic dumpster fire, if you will. America, reeling from the stock market crash and sky-high unemployment, decided to double down on a bad idea, the infamous Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930. Instead of putting out the economic fire, Smoot-Hawley threw gasoline on it. It slapped huge tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods, basically slamming the door shut on international trade. The result? A global trade war, economic retaliation from other countries, and a deepening of the Great Depression. Oops, Smoot-Hawley was a harsh lesson in the dangers of protectionism. It taught us that while tariffs might seem like a good idea in theory, in practice, they can have unintended consequences, like tanking the global economy and making everyone miserable. Thankfully, we eventually learned from our mistakes. After World War II, the US, along with other countries, embraced a new mantra: free trade. The latter half of the 20th century saw the rise of globalization, a fancy word for the interconnectedness of the world's economies. Trade barriers fell, goods and services flowed freely, and countries became more economically interdependent. It was the era of the global village, where everyone was connected and the world seemed to be getting smaller. But like a delicious cheesy pizza, globalization wasn't without its downsides. While it brought cheaper goods, new markets, and economic growth, it also created winners and losers. Manufacturing jobs, once the backbone of the American economy, began to shift overseas, lured by lower labor costs and looser regulations. Enter Donald Trump stage right in 2016. He tapped into a vein of economic anxiety, particularly among those who felt left behind by globalization. He promised to bring back jobs, renegotiate trade deals, and put America first. His weapon of choice? You guessed it, tariffs. Donald Trump, known for the art of the deal, saw himself as a master negotiator. He believed America was being taken advantage of in trade deals. Countries like China and Mexico used sneaky tactics. Trump thought tariffs would force fairer deals. It was a high-stakes gamble seen as genius or reckless. Let's talk about China for a second, shall we? They were the big kahuna, the elephant in the room, the main target of Trump's tariff tirade. At the heart of this trade spat was the issue of intellectual property theft and forced technology transfers. China had a bit of a reputation for playing fast and loose with intellectual property rights. American companies, from tech giants to small businesses, accused them of stealing trade secrets, counterfeiting goods, and forcing them to hand over valuable technology as a price of doing business in China. Imagine this: you spend years developing a revolutionary new gadget, only to have someone make a cheap knockoff and sell it for a fraction of the price. That's essentially what American companies claimed China was doing, and they were losing billions of dollars in the process. Trump argued that these unfair practices were costing American jobs, stifling innovation, and giving China an unfair advantage in the global marketplace. He believed that tariffs were the only way to force China to change its ways and level the playing field for American businesses. More than just money, national security, and the case for tariffs. While the economic arguments for tariffs were certainly front and center, Trump also framed his trade policies through the lens of national security. He argued that relying too heavily on foreign countries for essential goods, like steel and aluminum, posed a threat to America's national security. Think about it. What happens if a war breaks out, or a natural disaster disrupts global supply chains? If America was dependent on other countries for crucial materials, it would leave us vulnerable and weaken our ability to defend ourselves. Trump pointed to industries like steel and aluminum, which had shrunk in the face of foreign competition. He argued that a strong domestic steel and aluminum industry was vital for building everything from military equipment to infrastructure. Critics argued that this national security argument was overblown, a convenient excuse to justify protectionist policies. The price we pay: tariffs and the American consumer. Remember that sweet vintage lamp you were haggling for at the flea market? Well, thanks to Trump's tariffs, that lamp, along with a whole bunch of other goods, just got a whole lot more expensive. That's because tariffs, those pesky import taxes, get passed down the line like a hot potato. And guess who gets stuck holding the bag? Yep, the American consumer. Think about all the things you buy that are made in China, Mexico, or other countries hit by the tariffs. Clothes, shoes, electronics, furniture, the list goes on and on. Now imagine having to pay 20% more for all those things. Not so fun, right? Economists warned that these price hikes would hit lower-income households the hardest. They argued that when you're living paycheck to paycheck, a 20% increase in the cost of basic necessities can make a real difference. And it wasn't just everyday goods that got pricier. Businesses, big and small, also felt the pinch. Boom or bust industries caught in the tariff crossfire. While tariffs are often painted as a way to protect American jobs, the reality is far more nuanced. Sure, some industries benefited from the tariffs, but others took a direct hit, caught in the crossfire of this economic tug-of-war. Let's start with the winners, shall we? Domestic steel and aluminum producers, long complaining about unfair competition from overseas, were pretty happy campers. The tariffs gave them a much-needed boost, allowing them to raise prices and regain some lost market share. But for every winner there were also losers, and sometimes, the losers were industries you wouldn't expect. Take the washing machine industry, for example. Trump slapped tariffs on imported washing machines hoping to protect American jobs. But guess what? The tariffs also made the parts needed to make those washing machines more expensive, leading to higher prices and, ironically, job losses in the U.S. washing machine industry. Farmers were another group caught in the crossfire. China, a major buyer of American agricultural products, retaliated against Trump's tariffs with tariffs of their own, targeting soybeans, pork, and other agricultural exports. Global headaches, unintended consequences, and retaliatory measures. Remember that delicate house of cards we talked about earlier, the one representing global trade? Well, Trump's tariffs weren't just a clumsy paw swipe, they were more like a wrecking ball, sending shockwaves throughout the global economy. One of the biggest concerns was the potential for a trade war. When one country imposes tariffs, others tend to retaliate, leading to a tit-for-tat escalation that can spiral out of control, and that's exactly what happened. China, Mexico, Canada, the European Union, they all retaliated with tariffs of their own, targeting American goods ranging from Harley-Davidson motorcycles to Kentucky bourbon. This trade war created uncertainty and instability in the global economy. Businesses, faced with higher costs and unpredictable trade policies, became more cautious about investing and hiring. Section 1. The Grocery Cart Conundrum, Rising Prices, and Consumer Choices. For everyday Americans, the trade war wasn't just some abstract economic theory, it was playing out in their wallets and shopping carts. Remember those Made in China labels you used to see on practically everything? Well, they didn't disappear, but the prices next to them sure did climb. That cheap toaster oven you were eyeing? Suddenly it cost 20% more. Those new sneakers your kid needed for school? Yep, they were pricier too. From clothes and toys to electronics and furniture, the tariffs trickled down to consumer goods, making everyday life more expensive for millions of Americans. For families on tight budgets, these price increases created a real strain. Section 2. Navigating the Tariff Maze, Business Strategies and Uncertain Futures. Imagine running a business in a trade war, with tariffs flying like angry tweets. American businesses faced a complex, unpredictable landscape. Some absorbed costs, others raised prices, risking sales. Smaller businesses had no choice but to raise prices. It was a delicate balancing act. Larger corporations faced bigger challenges. They had to decide whether to shift production. Some brought manufacturing back to the US, while others moved to countries like Vietnam or Mexico. The tariffs created uncertainty for businesses. Investment decisions were put on hold. Companies hesitated to make long-term plans. The trade war dragged on economic growth and job creation. Section 1. Allies on edge, strained relationships and broken trust. Remember that old saying, keep your friends close and your enemies closer? Trump slapped tariffs on America's closest allies. Canada, Mexico, the European Union, all hit by Trump's America First trade policy. Imagine a neighbor suddenly demanding a fee to use the grill. Long-standing trade agreements felt betrayed. Tariffs strained relationships, creating a rift, a short-sighted policy that damaged American leadership. Section 2. A World Divided, the Tariff War and the Future of Global Trade. Trump's tariffs symbolized the rise of protectionism, threatening the global trading system. The tariff war disrupted globalization, dividing the world into economic blocks. It was like a Jenga game, each tariff making the system unstable. The big question remains, what will this mean for the future of global trade? Section 1. The Tariff Tango, a Legacy of Uncertainty and the Long Road Ahead. The Trump tariffs left a trail of broken agreements and confusion. The dust is still settling and long-term consequences are unclear. Did it make America great again? Well, that depends on who you ask. Some industries saw a short-term boost, but others, like agriculture, suffered. Consumers felt higher prices, and the global economy got jittery. Relationships with allies were tested, and global trade was questioned. Trump's tariff tango was a gamble, a high-stakes game of economic chicken. Whether it was brilliant or reckless, that's a debate for years to come. The global trade landscape is forever altered, and the road ahead is uncertain. Stay tuned, folks, this story isn't over.